A lot of gardeners in Oklahoma have a great interest in our wildflowers or native plants. And we happen to be in a prairie that has just an incredible amount of native plants, a lot of wildflowers. We see all kinds of things out here. In fact, we could say there's a lot more diversity, probably more so than you would see in some of our other prairies and areas around the state. Well, joining us is Dr. Ron Tyrl.
Steve, nice to be here today.
Welcome to the program. Dr. Tyrl is a botany professor at OSU, and Dr. Tyrl, why is there so much diversity in this particular prairie?
Okay, Steve, we're standing in the middle of a tallgrass prairie that is cut for prairie hay once a year. And so we have conditions that are perhaps duplicating what it was like before Europeans arrived on the scene. The site we're at, as you look around you, is an area known locally as the Manning Prairie.
Okay.
It was purchased by the Manning family in the 1930s and has been maintained as a hayfield for the past several decades.
Okay.
It's kind of an interesting place and a little bit different from most prairie sites. And it's very comparable to ones that we have all around the state. Small tracts of land, anywhere from just a few acres to perhaps a quarter of a section or so. There used to be a railroad track along the north over here, and the trains coming along often would set prairie fires that would maintain the character of the prairie, keep the shrubs at bay. And then Mr. Manning, when he began to cut it for hay once a year, did something a little bit different than most people do. He would cut in August rather than the normal July. And as a result, a lot of the prairie species that we have here would have a greater chance to produce seeds and fruits. And so we have a tremendous diversity of plants.
Okay, and as far as like livestock grazing,
this area has never been plowed, and as far as I know, if cattle have been running here just occasionally.
Okay.
Many of the species that we'll see as we later on this morning are indicators that that's really in pristine condition. A lot of species that are species that would disappear if it had been heavily grazed.
So a lot of these plants wouldn't be here because the cattle seem to love to
relish them. They will come back and eat on them repeatedly.
Yeah. Okay, so it's been pretty well preserved.
Yes.
Okay.
Beautiful site, exciting place to be.
Okay, well let's look at some of these plants. Right over here I see a wonderful little
now here's something, several years ago when I saw this plant for the first time, I really got excited because I had only seen it before in the south central part of the state. This is Mashallia caespitosa, Barbara's buttons. It's a member of the sunflower family. What you're looking at is not just an individual flower, but a whole cluster of flowers. These ones at the edge have already opened, and then the ones in the center have yet to open. Over the next several days, they'll gradually open, just a few at a time.
Okay, so we have a whole cluster of flowers right there.
It's characteristic. We refer to that as a head or a capitulum, to use the technical term.
Okay. All right. Well, let's look at a few of these plants back here. This here's a really showy blue plant that we've shown in our gardens, but as you can see, it's a naturally occurring plant.
Yes, this is the Baptisia australis, or the wild blue indigo. It's one of several indigos that we have in the state, and this one's a little bit unusual in that it's not quite as tall and as erect as many of its relatives are. Normally it'll be perhaps half again as tall. It's a member of the pea family, and it should be obvious by the rather spectacular pea-like flower, or papillinaceous flower, as we say.
And that word comes from?
If you'll think of the French, and my favorite, when I tell my students about this, I remind them of the movie Papillon with Steve McQueen and Dustin Hoffman. And if you'll remember, what Papillon had tattooed on his side was the butterfly. And you can see a rather fanciful resemblance to the butterfly, with a large petal known as the standard or the banner, then two petals to the side, the wings, and then two petals that are fused together to form a structure similar to the keel of a boat.
Okay.
And that's the papilionaceous flower.
Well, right down here we have a little pale pink member of the, I think, the hibiscus family.
Right. This is Callirhoe alcaeoides, the pale prairie mallow. One of the easiest families to recognize, the Malvaceae, with the stamens fused into a staminal column in the very center of the flower. Now, you said hibiscus, everyone knows the hibiscus. Can you think of what other members of this family have this same sort of flower?
Looks similar to the okra.
Okra, definitely, which is also a member of the genus Hibiscus, and cotton, is a member of this family as well. If we're lucky, we'll find another one called the cowboy mallow, which has a magenta or wine cup that should be out here as well.
Maybe we'll see one of those a little bit later.
Right.
Well, right back here, we've got some very showy plants. And Dr. Tyrl, it seems like we have a lot of this little plant, these little shrubs, little silvery colored shrubs. I mean, they're just everywhere out here.
Okay. This one is not particularly exciting right now, but give it just a few weeks here and there'll be a beautiful deep purple blue cluster of flowers. It's also a member of the legume family or the pea family. And this is Amorpha canescens, lead plant.
Lead plant. Okay.
You can see where it gets the name lead plant because the leaves are covered with gray hairs that give it somewhat of a gray cast, a silvery gray cast to it. Now,
like lead.
It doesn't, yes, exactly. It doesn't look very exciting right now, but if a cow was out here, a cow would be this would be the equivalent of a Brahms ice cream sundae with extra chocolate and extra whipping cream on it. This is a plant that really is a good indicator of the grazing conditions. It's highly palatable, highly nutritious. Cattle seek it out repeatedly, and it's one of the first plants to disappear when there's heavy grazing pressure in a prairie. So we know by its abundance here that we don't have those conditions.
Okay, but yeah, I guess if we had some cattle out here, this would be one of the first to go.
One of the first to go.
Okay.
And as I mentioned, it's a member of the pea family. And if you look just past it, here's another member of the pea family with small papilionaceous, or those butterfly flowers again. This is scurf-pea, Psoralea tenuflora. Scurf-pea. It's also a member of the family.
It's kind of like the false blue indigo, only a lot smaller.
A lot smaller.
Yeah.
Some might remind some of our viewers of Medicago, the alfalfa.
Okay.
The flowers are very
it
similar.
does look similar to alfalfa. Okay. Well, let's go back here and look at some more of these native plants. Well, Dr. Tyrl, we've been seeing this yellow flower a lot out here on the prairie. Which one is that?
Okay, can't escape the family again. It's another member of the sunflower family, Coreopsis grandiflora, one of our tickseeds. It and its relatives have been brought into cultivation. I'm sure you have some established at the gardens.
We actually do, yeah.
A beautiful thing, forms tremendous populations, provides showy color, and one of our spectacular wildflowers. You know, when I said you can't escape the family, there's 3 families in the state that dominate the landscape. The sunflower family, the Asteraceae, with about 300 species here in the state, 100 genera. The grasses, the Poaceae, which forms the green matrix or backdrop that we always take for granted, again about 300 species. And then we have the legume family, the Fabaceae, which is almost as large with 100 or so species in the state. And those 3 species you encounter time and time again as we walk.
Okay. Well, Dr. Tyrl, this area right here kind of looks like a crop circle or something.
Okay.
Can you tell us maybe what we're looking at here?
It's not a crop circle, but it is something that's rather interesting and a characteristic of our prairies of North America. Notice the change before I tell you what it is. We've come from our prairie grasses, and all of a sudden we've got a I'm hoping the color will show up here. Kind of a darker green, that's Spikerush, the genus Eleocharis. And then as you get into the center, and there's a little bit of a depression here, we have a buffalo wallow.
A buffalo wallow.
Okay, the bison that at one time dominated the landscape. These areas, there's probably a high level of clay in the soil, kind of a clay pan here, would come and to remove parasites and to have a good dusting and so forth, would get on their backs and wallow. And often these wallows will have a rather distinctive flora associated with them. Because they'll hold water, a lot of species that require a little bit more moisture will occupy them at various times of the year. And because the soil is often very tightly packed, different species will be present.
So those plants that occupy this area are very appreciative that the buffalo came and made
created a disturbance.
Yeah. Okay.
A natural disturbed area in the site. And if you notice, you can just tell by the color. Let me come out here and show you this. Notice this grass right here with a real delicate cast to it.
Leaning over.
You know,
there.
you see it right here in the wallow, but you don't see it up in the surrounding prairie at all. This is Agrostis, one of the ticklegrasses. Again, it's a relative. It's very small spikelets, but it's a relative of the grass that's used in putting greens on golf courses and so forth. It's a bent grass, but it's one of our native bent grasses.
Interesting.
And then as one looks around, we have a number of different sedges here, members of the Cyperaceae. And you can see how this one could be kind of a pretty little thing in a water garden or in a wetland situation.
Okay. So they also need the extra moisture this buffalo wallow has created.
And then right behind them here, I'm going to go ahead and pull one here, just the top part of the plant. This very inconspicuous sedge, I'm hoping it'll show up here. This is Spikerush. It's a flowering plant, and it's actually already past flowering and into fruit here. Naked stems, and then bearing a tight cluster of flowers right at the very end of the stem there.
Okay. So we have grasses and then these little grass-like plants. Okay.
Graminoids, the sedges. And characteristic of slightly wetter sites.
Okay, well let's move on out of the buffalo wallow and see what else we can find. Well, Dr. Tyrl, this is a neat little white flowering plant.
It's probably been catching your eye as we've been walking across the prairie here.
Yeah.
This is one of our species that's almost an endemic to Oklahoma. In fact, it even has the name Penstemon oklahomensis. Wow. The specific epithet oklahomensis, in a sense, reflects its geographical distribution. If it wasn't just for a couple of counties in Kansas and a couple of counties in Texas, this would be a true endemic, meaning found just within the borders of Oklahoma.
That's incredible. At least we got to name it after our state.
Yes. It's really a spectacular little plant, although it's not quite as showy as some of its relatives. It's a member of the Scrofulariaceae, the figwort family. Our viewers probably would recognize its relatives, snapdragon, for example, or foxglove, also another member of the same family. The common name often used for it is beard's tongue, and that's because it has 5 stamens. Now this one's not going to show it very well. 5 stamens, 4 are fertile, and 1, I don't know if I can get it out here or not, 1, you can see the yellow there.
Little hairs.
Hairs. It's a sterile stamen with hairs on it. We call that a staminodium, and hence the name beard's tongue.
A bearded tongue.
Yep.
Incredible.
So, okay. You know, as we look at this one, it's one of its relatives is just a little ways down here. Let's go look at it in comparison.
About 10 yards away here.
Yeah. That's one of the exciting things about being in a prairie such as this. You can take 10 steps, look down, and there'll be something different there. Here we have, as you can see, another Penstemon. This is the big showy one that often people will see along the roadsides and so forth.
Much larger flowers.
Okay, the Penstemon cobea, or cobea, some people pronounce it. And it's a little easier to see how it's a true member of the Scrofulariaceae with that strongly two-lipped corolla there. Interesting, it'll have a considerable variation in color. This one's pretty white, but you'll see some, well, even you can see some of the variation on
A little bit of pinkish
the
purple.
buds that are opening.
Yeah. I love the coloration down inside the flower there, and it does look somewhat like a huge snapdragon.
Yes, exactly.
Well, the change is certainly noticeable as we come down the hill
slope.
here.
What we've done is we've been walking. We've walked over onto a north-facing slope here, and as you may be able to see is looking at the abundance of the grasses, they've started thinning out a little bit.
Yeah.
And as we go just a little bit farther, all of a sudden, we come to an area where we have essentially no grasses at all, and then a profusion of a little annual plant in here. Notice how the soil, obviously quite rocky here, much thinner here. And you remember this expression from one of my classes, notice the change.
Absolutely.
A change in the environmental conditions often is accompanied by a change in the plants that are present. And we're standing in the middle of a population of our state wildflower. I almost hate to step on some, because there's so many here.
But they're so showy.
Okay, Gaillardia pulchella. This is another member of the sunflower family. And can you see the little spider that's right there on those individual corollas? These three-lobed, what look like petals, the old loves me not, actually are three-lobed corollas, intact flowers, and there's a little spider right on one. Okay. And then in the center we have, and those are called ray flowers, or ray florets.
Individual flowers.
Individual flowers,
Okay.
and then in the middle, not quite as showy, are the disc florets or disc flowers. So again, we have the head here.
A collection of flowers.
And this is our state wildflower. Many people know mistletoe. That is now our state floral emblem. A taxonomist by the name of Doyle McCoy, many of our viewers are familiar with his Roadside Wildflowers of Oklahoma book.
Got the picture on the front.
He's the individual who almost single-handedly lobbied the state legislature to have this plant designated as our state wildflower a number of years ago. And it's certainly an interesting, most appropriate choice. We call it Indian blanket. It's also known as Mexican hat. It's also known as glad flower. Also known as come home husband be he ever so drunk flower.
Incredible.
Won't try to explain to you the story behind that last name, but many different common names for really a spectacular wildflower. And while we're seeing this one with somewhat of an orange, red, and yellow, there's tremendous variation in the hues that are produced by this plant. You'll find some that are almost yellow, some that are orange, some a deep red.
Yeah. Well, I think this is much showier than the mistletoe.
Yes.
Well, let's see what else we can find, Dr. Tyrl. Well, Dr. Tyrl, our Oklahoma proven perennial for this year is a plant that was hybridized from one of our native plants, the Magnus purple coneflower, and it was hybridized from Echinacea purpurea. But this looks like a totally different coneflower. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
This is Echinacea pallida, the prairie coneflower. A little bit different from some of the other members of the genus because it produces white pollen rather than the regular yellow pollen that we associate with the genus. And it is really quite an unusual plant. As you can see, just on this individual plant here, there's quite a bit of variation in the color of these structures. Now I'm going to quiz you.
Oh boy.
Just see if you've been paying attention. These structures around the edge, are those petals or something else?
Those are ray florets.
Ray florets, and entire flowers that we're looking at. In fact, we could go loves me not, pull them off, and we'd be pulling off individual flowers there.
Not petals.
And not petals. Or they're actually 5 fused petals together. And then as the heads mature, the ray florets will droop and give kind of a ringed appearance here. In fact, there's one right over here that we could look at.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
a little bit windblown, but you can still get the feeling for it in that the ray florets have drooped down. And then what's especially exciting, you can see right at the edge of the center of the head, here are individual disc florets that are opening and are getting ready to shed their pollen. And then eventually when fertilization occurs, the achenes will be produced and we'll have the next generation being dispersed.
Okay. Well, Dr. Tyrl, if our viewers are interested in learning more about native plants and wildflowers, what do you suggest?
No, I have just the solution. They ought to participate in some of the activities of the Oklahoma Native Plant Society. This was a group formed in the late 1980s to promote awareness of our state wildflowers. It comprises approximately 500 members right now, with chapters in Tulsa, Stillwater, Oklahoma City. And what we do is we get out in the field and look at wildflowers. We sponsor field trips at various times of the year throughout the state just to take people out and look at the wildflowers when they're in full flower. We have monthly meetings where people get together and talk about various aspects of wildflowers. It's really a dynamic organization, and we encourage people to participate. You don't have to be a member. We encourage you to be a member, but you don't have to be. But it really is a way to get out and to see wildflowers.
Okay.
In terms of contacting the society, perhaps the best thing to do is to go to the society's website,
Okay.
Oklahoma Native Plant Society, and get at it that way.
Okay. Well, Dr. Tyrl, thank you so much.
All right. Any time to get in the field is the best time for me.
Okay. I certainly appreciated it here.
Okay.
Okay. Also like to say a big thanks to the Manning family for allowing us to come and do the tour of this prairie.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.